Hey there, my name is AJ Pickett and I make videos about role-playing games, mostly Dungeons & Dragons, occasionally other stuff, and today, a bit of both. When Monty Cook and Bruce Cordell and other D&D creative writers and game designers went their own way and made their own publishing company, they made a really cool game system and a gonzo science fantasy world setting called Numenera, which has a lot of amazing concepts in it, and I think the game system that does a slightly better job than vanilla Dungeons & Dragons at supporting a more narrative playstyle. For the simple reason that it fobs off a lot of the dice rolling and game mechanics onto the players, rather than the person running the game, which feels different when you sit down and actually play the system. But I'm not going to be talking about the Numenera role-playing game in any great detail today. I'm going to talk about Arcana of the Ancients, which I have mentioned a few times in live streams and such, and I wanted to share with you why this is such a game-changing resource for your own 5th edition D&D games, because it is designed to bring many of the best parts of Numenera and hand them over to you as a set of tools and resources that are extremely easy to just plug into your game and get playing. Plug and play. It works. Bruce R. Cordell and Sean K. Reynolds did a fantastic job on the writing and design of this book, plus they packed it with the same kind of mind-blowing art you find throughout the Numenera RPG books, and you'll be seeing just a taste of Numenera artwork in this video. Are you the kind of player or dungeon master who really enjoys encountering or including some really weird stuff in your games? I mean, when the players finally get their hands on some loot for their characters, or it comes time to throw in something unexpected and cool into this high fantasy role-playing experience. Magic items, magic artifacts, magical creatures and such have always been the D&D one-size-fits-all solution to that situation. We have tinkered with different takes on magical powers, effects and items over the many years of the game and all its different editions, but I think Numenera and its theme of lost high technology as being in the same sort of niche as magic is something of a whole new toolset for us, and I'm happy to say that the core game mechanics of this new stuff is actually very simple and very easy to remember. It's intuitive, created by people who know exactly what a DM needs and how they like the information presented. So settle back, grab yourself a tasty beverage, we're about to get deeply nerdy. Throughout the source book, which includes an introductory adventure designed to be slotted into any game setting, the technology listed is attributed to lost ancient civilizations, and if I just take my specialty, the Forgotten Realms, as an example, the perfect ancient culture to have created this techno-magic is the Artificers of Imaska. So I would not only disperse these items far and wide, but seed all sorts of adventure paths that lead inexorably to the mysterious eastern lands, far across the waters of the Sea of Fallen Stars, into the ancient civilizations of Unther and Malharund. Or there are tons of options for a real wilderness hex crawl adventure and discovery across the continent from the border kingdoms or the southern coasts. Anyway, the important part is that the players are in for a lot of discovery vibes in this campaign. You'll essentially be making up a ton of homebrew stuff as you go, so it's a campaign that has a very high resistance to DM burnout in my experience. These ancient treasures of a highly advanced culture get dug up and passed around collectors, so you can encounter them just about anywhere, even sitting in a junk pile in some dusty antique store or gathering dust in a pawnbroker's shop. The owners of the businesses never manage to figure out exactly what the things do. The devices are categorized into 5 different broad categories. They are Relics, Iron Flesh, Ciphers, Discoveries, Mutations and Oddities. These categories are not about the game mechanics, they're about the point of view of the people in your game world and how they interact with the technology. Sometimes these devices are complex contraptions made of metals and synthetic substances, unusual crystals and even living components. However, what they are made of is not always very indicative of what they do. Devices pulled from an ancient ruin might be complete devices found intact, but many are just parts of a larger device that had its own function, and this might be obvious, it might not. A rod that spits bolts of lightning may be nothing more than a spark plug for a large skyship. For characters trying to extract devices from other machines or from the body of a creature, or simply trying to identify what the device does, the Arcana skill check covers just about everything. Now, here's the thing. While Arcana is an intelligence-based skill, it doesn't have to be. For example, if a character is trying to surgically attach a bit of iron flesh, also known as cybernetics or bionics, to another creature or person, the character should roll a dexterity skill check, which if the character is trained in Arcana, they get to add that Arcana proficiency bonus to. It really is that simple. The DM decides what the difficulty class for the skill check is. The player rolls against that target, and they get to add their attribute bonus, and if trained in Arcana, they get to add their proficiency bonus based on the experience level of the character. For an example of the skill check difficulties, the salvaging of a device is only a DC 10 without any additional complications. Once a device is salvaged, it can be identified. The difficulty class for identifying a device is based on its type, so an Oddity or Cipher is a DC 10, while a Relic or Ironflesh is a DC 15. If the attempt to identify it fails, it can be tried again, but the subsequent checks versus the DC are made at a disadvantage, rolling two 20-sided dice and using only the lower of the result. Also, the regular Arcana training for characters in D&D worlds is not quite prepared for these ancient and unusual technologies, since they are not constructed in the same way as magic items, and they rely more heavily on very advanced versions of alchemy and what is considered by most to be quite forbidden lore of flesh sculpting and folded dimensions and who knows what else. So characters skilled in Arcana can only add half their normal proficiency bonus to any rolls having to do with these devices. This will change when the DM determines that the character has enough familiarity with the strange devices that there's no hard rules for exactly when that is. You can base it on the number of new devices the character has successfully identified over time. That's what I would do. Any character can attempt to use a device they have not identified. This is usually a DC 15 Intelligence Arcana check, only adding that half proficiency bonus if they are trained in Arcana. Otherwise, it's just an intelligence bonus added to a 20-sided dice roll and hopefully getting a result of 15 or more. Usually, using an unidentified device takes one action and the player will have no idea what the result will be. If they manage to activate it correctly, the device will perform its function normally. If the character fails spectacularly, like roll on a result of 5 rather than 15, the device may malfunction and hurt them, or basically short out and become useless. And if they happen to roll a natural 1, I always reach for my net librum of 10,000 random magical effects, because any excuse to roll on that table must be taken in my campaigns. I have posted the link to that PDF down in the description text under the video. You are welcome. Okay, let's look at each category, and I will mainly just quote from the book here, with my own additions. Relics are devices left over from the civilizations of the past. They are of a more permanent nature than items in the Ciphers category, with more straightforward applications, weapons, armor, utility items, and so on. Still, they are rarely straightforward in actual use. Rather than find a device that was meant to be used as a weapon, the characters are far more likely to find an item that was originally intended for another purpose, but that has been modified. For example, a spaceport plasma energy valve now being used as a gauntlet that can project an energy shield. Relics are incomprehensible devices, likely powered by transdimensional siphons using nanotechnology to rewrite reality on an atomic or subatomic level. Even to someone who understands a great deal about Ancients Arcana, most relics appear to be more magic than machine. Of course, they are not actually magical. Still, some relics require attunements to use. You can be attuned to no more than 3 attunable relics at a time. If you bear more than 3 attunable items, including attunable magic items and Ironflesh, only 3 of them can be active at any one time, so there are no changes to how the attunement rules work. One really excellent rule introduced in this book is depletion. Many relics have a chance of power depletion per use, rather than having a set number of charges per day like some magic items and Ironflesh. If a relic with a depletion is used or activated, the player rolls the designated die. It's a 1d6, 1d10, 1d20 or 1d100, and if they are unlucky enough to roll the depletion number, say a 1 on a d12 roll, the item still activates, but that's the last time it can be used. Some devices never deplete, some require attunement. It's just one of the tools available to craft and introduce an item that has that element of chance to it, which helps keep things in check in the campaign a bit more. If a device has an automatic depletion, it can only be used once. Also, some devices only have a depletion chance if a specific function is used. So there's a lot of flexibility to it, and it's a very easy rules mechanic to understand. Also, it's fun. Relics are typically quite quirky, since nobody really understands them completely, and they're often cobbled together or used for purposes that they were never intended for. so there is a table of random quirks included in the Arcana of Ancients book. These are a great excuse for the Dungeon Master to throw a complication at the players that leads them to seek a solution, and thus directs the adventure to something the Dungeon Master can plan out before the player characters get there, and use it to further advance the campaign plot or introduce some new plot thread or side quest. When players decide to use weird items they don't fully understand, there's a sort of consent for the possibility that something freaky may happen to their character. For example, they might manage to activate the device, but doing so results in their character being sickened for 1 minute every time they use it, during which time they can perform all tasks with disadvantage on the d20 rolls. Maybe another device just gets annoyingly warm, or can only be activated in direct sunlight. These quirks are a lot of fun as well, and are quite similar to how powerful magical artifacts usually include some consequence of their use. Relics can be powerful as magical artifacts, it's just a little bit more unstable and a lot more mysterious. This book includes a lot of examples of relics for you to use, over 200 I think, also much more. Okay, moving on. Ciphers. A cipher is a leftover device, a bit of cast-off technology that still provides an amazing effect. These are one-shot items that appear to be magical but are not magical at all. Still, there's a danger to the ciphers. If more than 3 of them are collected and carried by one person, a strange and obvious resonance builds between the devices and the character's mind and body. Most don't wait to find out what happens if that resonance goes to completion, because it's usually bad. If not right away, then eventually. The random roll table for cipher danger uses a percentile dice roll, but actually goes from 1 to 201+%, and the first 60% results in nothing happening at all. None of the results under 100 are deadly, so the table is designed for modified percentage rolls, and those modifications are entirely up to the Dungeon Master. It's stuff like that that impresses the hell out of me. This table has the potential to result in the ciphers imploding into a mini black hole, utterly consuming the character, or causing the ciphers to merge and spontaneously spawn some sort of a nasty automaton. But this is optional. If the results don't make sense, the writers inform us to just shift the result up or down on the table and see if it fits. Ciphers are usually found in bunches. They need not be the same as each other, but they often are enough share a related function. Ciphers have different forms based on the 3 parameters: internal, wearable, and usable. Internal ciphers are things you ingest or inject. Wearable ciphers are articles of clothing, jewelry, and other things you wear on your physical body. Usable ciphers are basically anything else. I can't cover all the ciphers included in the sourcebook, there are a lot, ranging from the awesome trans-dimensional ray projector that emits a line of energy across multiple dimensions at once, doing a fairly huge force damage to whatever it hits and flatly ignoring any armor or damage reduction, to a canister which gives artificial birth to these little creatures called troglodytes, which just wander around eating stuff that humanoids don't want to eat, growing to double their original size in one day and giving birth to 1d6 more troglodytes, each one becoming sterile after 5 days, so basically a handy food source which of course tastes like chicken, even if they happen to look like a cross between an eel and a housefly. It's entirely up to you what they look like and taste like, really. There is plenty here to inspire you to create an infinite variety of ciphers. Next up, we have Iron Flesh, which is the catch-all fantasy name for cybernetics and bionics. In fantasy games, cybernetics is tech that is enhancement of the body, or a replacement that is intended to look and function similarly to any lost body part. You might not realize a person has any cybernetic augmentations, while bionics are more clearly mechanical replacement parts and enhancements that take full advantage of being a brute and robotic mechanism. We don't need to go into any details on that because most of the Iron Flesh devices typically fall somewhere between these two, with a bit more weirdness thrown in. The key guidelines for Iron Flesh concern how risky it is for the characters to get these integrated devices, because trying to remove one without similar technology will result in the character dropping to 0 hit points and having to make death saving throws, because even a simple device will hook into the character and tap into their body energy and nervous system, so cutting it out of them is going to be gruesome. Iron Flesh almost always requires attunement to use, and again, none of these items change the existing rules for attunement and so on. Those implanted with the tech will gain an intuitive understanding of how the device functions, but not how it's made, repaired, or so on. They just get the instruction manual in their head, more or less. The Iron Flesh also has the same sort of quirks that you'll find in the Relic devices. Iron Flesh implants use charges of internal energy that must be expended to activate their properties. The number of charges an implant has is revealed when the Iron Flesh is identified. Like most items in 5th edition, expended charges will restore themselves after a long rest, and an expended item doesn't result in any sort of problem for the implanted character. It's not like their arm's going to go dead or anything. It might be that the characters with access to a crypt or a cache or other vault of ancients technology might have the option to implant and safely remove Iron Flesh devices, and there are suggestions for how this can be managed within the framework of 5th edition rules. For example, gaining or replacing an Iron Flesh implant instead of increasing some attribute points, or gaining a new feat when a character advances their experience level. So there are options you can make use of to quite radically change up your campaign setting, or just add a little bit of Robocop to it as you see fit. Another option in the toolkit. We only have just scratched the surface of all the options the book holds within its covers, such as the section on accidental dimensional rifts on page 258. This is found in the GM's advice section, which also talks about different materials the devices can be constructed out of, such as mammal flesh, fruit, or hardened liquid, and the default armor class for a device that begins at a base of AC 15. So while a device may look like a jellyfish machine gun, it doesn't have to have the same texture or consistency, whatever the hell that might be. Which slides us gibbering and screaming into the next category, mutations. It is possible for any sort of living creature to be born as or become a mutant. Having a mutation doesn't change a creature's species. The cause of the mutation might be accidental or deliberate. Many of the monsters in the monster manual have their origins in experiments by mad wizards or exposure to strange energies, exotic chemicals, poisons, and so on. Ancient civilizations certainly dabbled in this sort of stuff, and it is possible to deliberately or accidentally mutate a player character with some of this biotech when it's found. Mutations are often hereditary, passed down from parent to child like any other trait. However, particularly garish or monstrous mutations may result in individuals being persecuted in their own society and seeking isolation in remote locations where they may encounter more sources of mutation, and gradually a few hereditary mutations result in an entirely new species. One look at the massive diversity of life in the fantasy world of Toril and the large assortment of lost empires and the rise and fall of magical and technological civilizations, it doesn't take a genius to work out that this sort of thing is going on quite a lot. Also, civilizations on Toril, though it may sometimes appear kind of medieval, is anything but that. There really is a huge difference when you add magic, psychic powers, mystical martial artists, dragon-blooded sorcerers, tieflings, parallel dimensions, and the beings such as elves who originated there. This is not a medieval Europe, my friends. They just look like the fashion sense and the weapons technology. But if you really know much about history, the weapons sake, it doesn't make much sense at all. Heavy crossbows spell the end of the age of full suits of plate armor, but anyway, mutations are undoubtedly more common on fantasy worlds, and people probably have a little more tolerance for that sort of thing, within reason. If your next door neighbours happen to have red scaled skin, horns, and eat meals dusted with raw sulphur instead of salt and pepper, but they pay their taxes and don't bother anyone, so be it. Not only can you add mutations to creatures and non-player characters using this sourcebook, you may allow your players the opportunity to start play as a character with mutations, or with their consent, include the possibility of character mutations occurring during the campaign. Within Arcana of the Ancients, 5 categories of mutations exist. Beneficial mutations bring about changes that are neither physically obvious nor extraordinary. Powerful mutations are like beneficial ones but more potent. Harmful mutations are physical changes that are usually grotesque and somewhat debilitating. 4th category, distinct mutations, also provide significant abilities but mark the character as an obvious mutant. Last, cosmetic mutations bring no special capabilities at all and are merely cosmetic, though sometimes dramatically so. In theory, there is a sixth category that might be called crippling mutations, but these are not included on the random roll tables, and particularly for player characters, they must be really the result of discussion between the DM and the player. So if a character is born without legs or barely functional lungs or significant brain dysfunction, it is the player's choice, not the dungeon master's. However, a DM also has a say. They are players at the table as well. It's a cooperative game. That means everyone has a voice in how the group plays. Always talk it over with the group. Twitter has zero say in the matter. Ever. Be careful with mutations because we're dealing with genetic changes. These traits cannot be treated or corrected using healing or restoration magic. And while the abilities of the mutants may sometimes seem supernatural, they are not magical. They may be spell-like or psychic or simply just extraordinary, like superpowers. I strongly suggest you never let a player pick their mutation. Always require a random roll on the tables and the result is final. Variety is the spice of life after all. Each category of mutation has a random table which uses a percentile die roll for the result. As someone who has played games involving comic book super beings for many years, I can immediately expand on these tables enormously, but I can tell you just what you have in this book is a very solid addition to your toolkit. Next, we have Oddities. These are essentially weird items that do something cool, but they're not going to have any great impact on the game, kind of like the trinkets a character might carry with them. A cape that billows in a non-existent wind, an ever-smoking pipe, an artificial caterpillar that looks exactly like a moustache. There is a random table filled with examples that you can use or be inspired by. Finally, there are discoveries, and I'll just quote the book directly here. Discoveries are the most open-ended of all types of these devices. Discoveries are the things that are too big to be gear carried, but might still do something cool. A portal to another planet, a machine that performs cybernetic implantation surgeries, or a force cubes facility that can store anything, indefinitely. Each of these has great potential use for the player characters, but it's likely a one-time thing that they can't take with them and use later. Discoveries are best thought of as part of an adventure as opposed to a player character's personal equipment. In this way, as with the Ciphers, you don't have to hold back on what you create in the discoveries category. Not every discovery has to be of use to the characters. Sometimes they are interesting for their own sake and thus worth finding and interacting with for that discovery feeling. A still functional factory, a transmitter that once sent messages to other planets, or a vast storage facility of preserved plant life from the ancient times are all discoveries, even though there is no obvious use for them. In my experience, players will always hang the DM out to dry with some off-the-wall idea that takes full, spectacular and horribly game-derailing use of the most innocent bit of story fluff. For example, a DM friend of mine challenged the players with some bands of brigands, and after the bandits were wiped out, the players gathered up all the tents, simple weapons, clothes, bags, horseshoes, pots, pans, carts, and so on, and hauled all of it back to town and sold it all, and it was worth a small fortune. Never underestimate the creative sorcery of your players. This book also has over 100 pages packed with the most weird monsters you will ever find, all in one location. I want to make videos about all of them, perhaps one day I will. Plus, as I mentioned, the final section on mastering the Arcana includes 20 pages of solid advice and another couple of adventures after that include all the new tools with which to flex your new Dungeon Master muscles. You can pick up a PDF or hardcover copy of the book directly from Monty Cook Games' website. Link is in the video description down below. This is a must-have third-party sourcebook in my opinion. You can also purchase a product titled Your Best Game Ever from Monty Cook Games. It's a 240 pages in print, but there is additional chapters that you can download that were cut from the book for space. There's also an audiobook version. It's an unbelievable wealth of information on how to run the game like a demigod, dipped in the magical cauldron of the dragon's blood as a baby, eating bowls of polyhedral dice with milk every morning, blood composed of mountain dew. It's basically the manual of gainful exercise wondrous item, except it's for people running tabletop role-playing games. I'm not kidding. Tell you what, let's have a little giveaway, shall we? If we get 200 comments on this video which include your idea for a type of non-magical device of any of the types I mentioned in this video, I will pick a bunch of my favorites. then creating a poll in the community tab, and the winner, by popular vote, will win a $50 gift voucher you can use to buy a hardcover book of choice from Monty Cook Games website, out of my own pocket, because I love you. Please hit the like button if you made it this far, subscribe if you like what I do, get your family members to subscribe to my channel if you want me to get a silver play button. After all, my videos are more effective than sleeping pills when it comes to peacefully knocking out non-geeky people unconscious within 8 to 12 minutes of easy listening. Check out my Subscribestar or Patreon links for all the full scripts for these videos. Buy some merchandise from my spring store. You may see some new merch arriving there very soon. Wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.